Hi, I'd like to share with you a video interview made by the marvellous Peter Moss, who kindly invited me onto his YouTube channel to chat about my escapades in the world of entertainment and the world of the ukulele. Now, I must point out that it would have been equally interesting were I asking the questions and Peter telling his stories, but perhaps we'll do that at a later date. Anyway, for now, the spotlight is turned on me, so I hope you enjoyed this little chat we had in November 2020. If you're not familiar with Peter, do look up his work because he's a fantastic musician and was very inspirational to me, as you'll hear in this interview.
Hello, ukulele friends around the world. Now and again, I like to do interviews with the pros, and I'm absolutely delighted today to have Mr. Andy Eastwood, who is a renowned ukulele player, international ukulele player, and it's very difficult to pin him down. But of course, we're all locked down at the minute, so he's agreed for half an hour just to have a little chat with me. So stick with it. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So for now, welcome, Mr. Andy Eastwood.
Hello Peter, great to see you.
And you, my friend. And I see you've got a couple of friends there by your side, a wooden uke and a banjo uke. Yeah. Had to get them in the shot, absolutely. So what I like to do is, if it's okay, is to just explore your background. I mean, with myself, it was my parents that got me started with the uke. How did you start off?
Well, actually, it was, although I had a kind of a musical family, my mum's a singer and used to give singing lessons. My dad was not so much a musician, but always interested and always listening to music. But the real guy who started it off was my granddad. And so people say, oh, it was in the genes then, but actually no, it was my dad's stepfather. So not really related strictly, but my earliest memories are going to his house when I was a tiny tot. You know, I'm talking as far back as I can remember. We'd go around and he'd get the uke out and play old songs, you know, maybe George Formby numbers, comic songs, the old vaudeville stuff, country songs, all that, all the oldies. And he'd get the uke out, banjo uke or wooden uke, and he'd just play to me. So I was fascinated by it at an early age, and that's where it comes from.
Right, you and me both. I mean, my late father, he was a guitarist really, but came across a uke during the war years. He could see I was keen, wanting to copy him on the guitar, but my fingers at the age of like 7 weren't big enough to actually manage it. So, but like you say, I was inspired by what I was seeing, what I was watching him do. And because he'd come across a uke in the war years, he said, I'm going to start you on this for a couple of years and then say, well, you know, you'll probably ditch it after 3 years, pick up guitar and never pick up a ukulele again. So it's funny, isn't it, how things end up. So take us forward then.
Yeah, well, he died when I was 6. My granddad died when I was 6, and just before he died, he bought me a very cheap uke. It was the old Skylark, you know, the mass-produced Chinese brand Skylark. They were about £4, £4.50, something like that.
Yeah.
Just a step up from being a toy, really.
Right.
And that's what I started to play on. It sat around for a couple of years, and then one day a George Formby film came on TV. And I thought, yeah, I must pick that up and have a go on it. And I did. And as soon as I started to properly try to play it, I was off and never looked back. So it became an obsession. And I used to just keep practicing every day when I got home from school.
Yep.
Just pick the uke up right away and wouldn't put it down until I got somewhere, you know. So that's where it came from.
So in the early years, you obviously inspired by your grandfather and everything, and you had that instrument. Who's actually showing you the ropes, as it were, in the early years?
Well, I got the old tutor book called First Steps in Ukulele. That was the most regularly
I know that
available
book. Yeah.
Yeah, you would do. I mean, it was written back in the 20s and then they kept reprinting it. So it was still in the music shops. And that was all you could get, really, because there was obviously no internet. But we're talking about probably at 1989, something like that, by the time I started to get, you know, into it. So you could get this book, and of course it was all just a reproduction of the old 1920s book. and it was all, obviously everyone was in D tuning in those days, A D F sharp B.
Mm.
The C tuning hadn't really taken over then like it has now,
Mm-hmm.
and the songs in it were all the normal three or four chord songs that they used to put in My Old Kentucky Home and Early One Morning and all that kind of thing, whatever they were. John Peel and all these old traditional tunes that they could print without paying any royalties, So those were the things I started on, and then of course he had the George Formby songbooks on the shelf, so I picked those out and started trying to figure out the more complicated chords, and I was off. So I just taught myself, really.
Right. So what sort of age are we talking there? Back in 19, what was it? 87? Did you say?
About 88, 89 I started, so I'd be about 9, something like that.
Yeah.
And then my dad went to the local library and found a phone number for the George Formby Society, because we'd seen them on TV in one of these documentaries. And so we looked them up and gave them a call. And they said, yeah, we're still in operation. We've got meetings in Blackpool 3 times a year. And so that was the next step, to go up there to these big conventions. Well, they call them conventions now. We called them meetings in those days. And they were in the Winter Gardens. Beautiful venue in the middle of Blackpool, which was like it was like a dream to turn up there when I was I think it was 11 when I went to the first one.
Yeah.
And it was the weekend that George Harrison was there. It was the 30th anniversary meeting.
Okay.
And George Harrison dropped in, and the Sky TV cameras were there, and I thought this was amazing. In fact, it was amazing before I got in, because as I walked up the steps, I could hear ukes playing in the distance, and having spent a couple of years on my own, just sitting in the bedroom trying to fathom it out,
Yes.
it was just a dream to hear other people playing. So it was like going to ukulele heaven.
Absolutely, absolutely. My thoughts are the same. I go back to probably 1971. That the Imperial was the first time I was there, and I was quite shy in those days. A lot changed. And so basically, I had my sister with me, and it was great that I could play the uke, she could sing, and I could just focus on that. But I don't know if you ever attended one of the meetings, which was in the Warbrecken Edge rooms in the Imperial. Since no,
Because the first meeting I went to was actually the first time they'd been in the Winter Gardens.
Right. Yeah, fantastic. So I was there on that day, and I seem to remember Jimmy Nail being there as well. The guy did crocodile shoes and everything, so he was fascinating.
And so, of course, that's where I first met you, because you were the guy who was doing something different. There were a lot of great players in the Formby Society, always have been and still are. It's a brilliant tradition. We're very lucky to have this British tradition of uke playing over here, which a lot of countries don't have. But you were always the guy who did something a bit different, so there was always a buzz. Peter Moss is on in a minute, and you wanted to be in the room to see the stuff you did. I remember so well, you used to play the William Tell Overture, you used to do the Can on the wooden uke,
Right.
Yellow Bird, T for Two, all those great solos, and I was fascinated by them. I used to try and imitate them when I get home. I try and play what Peter Moss played, So you were always an inspiration.
Thank you. You didn't have to say that, but thank you. Much appreciated. While we're talking about the Formby Society, I'll just explain. We're doing this via Zoom, and it's not really fair to ask any player to play live on Zoom because of the sort of bandwidth and everything. The sound goes to pieces. So you sent me a few video clips, and the first one I'd like to play is Leaning on a Lamppost. Can you tell me why you picked that particular one, Andy?
Great, yeah, because first of all, because I had a decent video of it.
Fair enough.
Also, I mean, the nice thing about that is I'm playing it on George's uke, and that's the Gibson UB3, which I'm lucky enough to own now. And that came through a guy in the George Formby Society called Les Moore, lovely guy, and his wife Pat. When Les died, she said, I want you to have this because you'll use it, you'll look after it, and it will mean something to you. And Les and Pat didn't have any children of their own, so they were very, very nice to me. So, so I was very, very lucky to have that uke, and it's obviously my treasured possession. So
Yes.
it's nice
Yeah.
to see that.
Wow, fantastic. Right, let's hear you play Leaning on a Lamppost.
I'm leaning on a lamppost at the corner of the street in case a certain little lady comes by. Oh me, oh my, I hope the little lady comes by. I don't know if she'll get away, she doesn't always get away, but anyhow I know that she'll try. Oh me, oh my, I hope the little lady comes by. There's no other girl I could wait for, but this one I'd break any date for. I won't have to ask what she's late for. She'd never leave me flat, she's not a girl like that. Oh, she's absolutely wonderful and marvellous and beautiful, and anyone can understand why. I'm leaning on a lamppost at the corner of the street in case a certain little lady passes by. I'm leaning on a lamppost at the corner of the street in case a certain little lady comes by. Oh me, oh my, I hope the little lady comes by. I don't know if she'll get away, she doesn't always get away, but anyhow I know that she'll try. Oh me, oh my, I hope the little lady comes by. There's no other girl I could wait for, but this one I'd break any date for. I won't have to ask what she's late for. She'd never leave me flat, she's not a girl like that. Well, she's absolutely wonderful and marvellous and beautiful, and anyone can understand why. I'm leaning on a lamppost at the corner of the street in case a certain little lady passes by. At the corner of the street in case a certain little lady passes by.
So we're at the George Formby Society for all those years, having a blast with our friends there. What happened next in your career?
Well, as soon as I got the performing bug and found that I liked standing on stage and playing to people, I really took every opportunity I could find to do that. So I would start doing gigs, and I think it would be about the same year, that year or the year after. I would be about 11, 12 when I did my first paid gig, and I was at a sort of vehicle rally or something in South Sea Common, with my mum and dad. And I used to take my uke everywhere, and somebody spotted it and said, "Hey, can you play that? What have you got in there? Can you play it?" So before I knew it, I got the uke out and I was playing Formby songs, and a crowd gathered round, and they passed a hat round for donations like a busker,
Brilliant.
And I ended up with 25 quid, which was, when I was 12 years old, that was a heck of a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I thought, hey, this is good. I could be a profession in this, and that was the first time I got paid for a gig. And I must be due for a pay rise soon. But anyway, took every opportunity, to get a gig. So I'd do old people's homes, or little church fetes, or any time anyone was putting some kind of concert on.
Right.
Let me know if you need anybody. And my dad sort of acted as manager. He'd take the phone calls, and I'd go out and do whatever little gigs I could find. And it was great because I just ended up doing as much as I could, getting used to being in front of a crowd
Mhm.
and playing. And before I knew it, I had an hour long set I could do, and little clubs and hotels started to creep in then. So uh, gradually, every weekend, I got into the habit of doing gigs somewhere or other.
Mm.
So I got a lot of experience that way.
Fantastic. So, your repertoire, obviously we've got the Formby side of things. When did you first start playing sort of melody, and who were your influences there?
Well, pretty soon afterwards, and as I say, influenced by people like yourself, and who else was doing it? People like Steve Helm, he was one of the great players at the Formby Society. But of
Absolutely.
course, it wasn't a big scene in those days. That was the scene. The Formby Society was it. So we had to look, unlike today's players who can look at all the contemporary influences, we had to look back in time to that first wave of uke players like Formby, Cliff Edwards, Roy Smeck, all those great names. But that was no hardship. I mean, that was a great education to dig out the old records,
Mm.
and they were like gold dust. I remember going to old second-hand shops and flipping through all the LPs and 78 RPM records just to see if I could find anything with a uke on it. So that was my inspiration, and I just started to twiddle because I was already learning the violin and the piano and music theory. So I used to just sit and experiment, and I think I'd be about 14 probably when I came up with my first decent melody arrangements like Moonlight Serenade and Misty. Same arrangements that I still play actually.
Mm.
I was at school when I did those. And so it didn't take me too long, having a kind of a good musical background, didn't take me too long to start experimenting on the uke and trying to do something different.
Mm. So, talking of such, what is your next clip going to be that we're going to be showing people?
Well, I think we might do a classical one because, as I say, I did like the idea of doing something unusual on the uke and having a classical background because it wasn't all that long before I started my music exams. I did A-level music, then I went to Oxford University to do music. So it was always very classical, and the violin took up most of my playing time while I was a student. So it was kind of a natural thing for me to want to do something classical on the uke. So this is from a little CD I made about 5 years ago called Three Classics for Ukulele. So I took classical pieces and arranged them for the uke, and this is probably my favourite one. It's an old Chopin piece, and it's the Etude. I think it's Opus 10, number 3. And the melody of this was also used for a great popular song called So Deep Is the Night, which was a big hit for my showbiz mentor, Ken Dodd.
Mhm.
And a beautiful song. But I went back to the original piano piece and tried to fit it onto the uke, which I think works pretty well. Let's see what you think anyway.
Okay, let's hear it. So that was absolutely beautiful, Andy. Well done on that. So let's move forward then. So you're at uni, you're leaving uni. What do you do next?
Well, I did want to go into the profession. You know, I'd made my mind up certainly well before that that was what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
So all the time I was through my student years, I was doing my act and trying to improve it all the time. So really, when I left uni, I had an act ready to go, more or less, and I got a good bit of publicity as I left uni because I did the first ever uke recital for my finals, my exams, and that got on the TV and in the papers. So it gave me a good boost right at the moment when I was just starting out, which was very, very useful. So I just went to a couple of showcases, wrote to a few agents, and just tried to see if I could get proper gigs rather than the sort of semi-pro cheapies I'd been doing.
Hmm.
And I pretty soon got into hotel, cabaret, holiday parks, that kind of thing. And I only really had to, clubs as well, a few clubs, not too many. But I only did about a year of that circuit before I managed to break into where I really wanted to be, which was the theatre. Because growing up as a kid, as I said, I'd had, my granddad's tastes, which I'd taken on, the old variety style entertainment. And I'd always sort of thought I'd love to have been a variety performer, but I've missed the boat because I was born too late, But actually, I was lucky enough to catch the tail end of it all. I mean, they've been saying variety's dead since 1950, but it does still exist if you can find it. So I was very lucky. I worked with Mike's Biograves as a kid, and I'd only been working for about a year, as I say, before I got in with Ken Dodd. And that was an absolute dream for me because I was he was a hero of mine. I was a fan anyway. I'd been to see him as a fan, as an audience member. I'd met him backstage afterwards because he was so generous with his time. He'd talk to everybody. So I remember going with my dad as a kid to see him at Bournemouth Pavilion. And then the next time I met him, I was working for him. So that was great. I never looked back after that because he had so much advice to give. He gave you the sort of advice you can't get anywhere else because you can't you can study music all you want, but they don't teach you how to be an act. So it was like going back to college working with Ken Dodd because he pulled my act to pieces and showed me how to put it back together again in ways that would work better. So I was very, very lucky to be able to work with someone like that.
What an incredible journey. I mean, that's fantastic. And somebody, such a mentor, such as Ken Dodd. I mean, sadly, he passed, was it a couple of years ago was he 90? Was he?
He was 90, so yeah, it must
Yeah.
be just come to 3 years ago nearly now. Yeah,
Wow.
so that was just incredible. Yeah, I mean, I worked with him solidly from that would be 2002. It was January 2002. I first worked with him, and I carried on up until he passed away. And in fact, just 3 days I think before his 90th birthday was the last gig I did with him. And I
Right.
think I did over the years. I did about 350 shows with him as his guest act. Yeah, it was absolutely.
Treasured memories, absolutely. Yeah. I'd like to go back, if I may. You mentioned getting influences off recordings and things, and you and me both are fans of Roy Schmeck. Or Smeck,
Yeah.
even. I always say that wrong. Roy Schmeck? No, Smeck. And a piece I like to play, and so do you, is Rockin' the Uke. And you've kindly sent me a version on the banjo uke again, which I had a little preview of last night, and it's absolutely amazing. Everybody's going to enjoy this. What made you pick this one out from your collection?
Well, again, it was one that people used to play back at the Formby Society, yourself included, and it was a fairly easy one to start off with, because it's those same chord shape just sliding down the neck, and so it's one that the people think, oh, I could do that, but then of course the way we play it, or the Formby Society started to play it, was developing it on from the original version. In fact, it's one of these things that's become like a traditional part of the repertoire, in that I think more people learnt it from each other than ever heard the original Roy Smeck version.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I got it from a very sort of early age, sort of 14, 15 sort of thing, compared to what I am now, I mean. And how I listen to it then and how I play it now are completely different, and it keeps evolving. And I really enjoy your version of this. So let's have a listen to that right now.
Great.
I said it was good, didn't I? Absolutely fantastic arrangement there, Andy. Superb. And I'm surprised your right hand doesn't fall off, actually. It's speed you go. Incredible. So let's go more towards sort of the present date sort of thing. What have you been doing in the last 2 or 3 years?
Well, certainly things have changed a bit. The variety circuit, we've lost a couple of big players like Ken Dodd, and I was working for Dougie Chapman for years as well, the great impresario from Blackpool. I did thousands, literally, of dates for him. So that's kept me busy for 15 years or so, and then they both passed away within a year of one another. So life had changed a little bit more cruise work, which I always like doing, the cabaret on the cruise ships. It's quite hard work. The travelling, sometimes you fly out to the ships and you have to play the next night with an awful lot of jet lag and a band you've never met before and all that kind of thing. It's quite a daunting gig sometimes. And of course the audience on the ships, they're quite fussy because they've seen everything. They have a lot of entertainment thrown at them. So you've got to be quite convincing, but they're very nice gigs if you can get into the feel of them. So I've done quite a few years of those now, and I feel quite at home on the ships now. So those are nice to do. Also been producing shows as well of my own, because there are so few variety producers about now. So I've had a dabble at putting them on. I run a series of shows at Coventry at the Belgrade Theatre, and we've had great people there. I've had Roy Hudd, Anita Harris, Jimmy Cricket, Freddie Parrotface Davies, all these great names, you know, that I'm lucky enough to know. They come and do a show for me, and we put a variety bill together. So those are great fun to do. But of course, this year, I've been doing a lot of sitting around at home.
Yeah, that's how it is. I'm doing a lot of things for tutoring and that, some videos and that, and it really is occupying my time. So I'm happy about that. Tell us about what you're doing with tutoring.
Well, this is it, because I've always done a little bit of teaching over the years, but never had a lot of time for it. So I've really been able to get on with that this year. So I'm doing Zoom lessons and group workshops as well. I've done quite a few of them, some of them organised by the different uke festivals, and some by little groups, ukulele clubs, and some of them I've just done myself, you know, say I'm going to do some one-to-one tuition. And I do it via Zoom. I usually do the face-to-face lesson on Zoom, and then I send a little video at the end of it and say, practice this, practice that, you know, so they get a little record of where they're up to, and a personal series of videos week by week. And the students tell me that works really well. They're very happy with that system. So I've done quite a lot of that, and that's keeping me, as you say, keeping me busy while we're sort of looking forward to what's coming afterwards.
That's it.
So that's going well. That's going really well.
So what I'll do in the description below is I'll put in a couple of links to your website and also what you're doing with the teaching and that. Okay.
Great.
So the last piece that you've sent to me is back on the wooden uke, and I must admit these days I am more of a fan of the wooden uke. It's Stardust. Can you tell me why you picked that piece?
Yeah, well, here we have a lockdown video from 2020. So this is, you know, one of the ones I made while sitting at home, unable to go anywhere. And you think, well, I'll just to keep myself sane and to keep the fingers moving, I'll do an arrangement and make a video. So that was what this was. And it's a tune I've always loved and never got round to playing until now. So I think it works beautifully on the Martin concert uke. So let's see if you like it.
Okay, let's hear it now. So, folks, I told you it was good, didn't I? Absolutely brilliant, that, Andy. So in these difficult times with COVID and everything, it's very difficult to sort of plan ahead. But can you tell us about things you've got penciled in at the minute?
Yeah, yeah, it has been very difficult. It's been a painful year for all artists, I think. As we sort of mourned our careers, really has felt like a bereavement in some ways. But maybe we'll get back to normal. I mean, all the gigs that were in the diary for the spring and summer, we started off by moving them to the autumn, and now of course nothing's changed. We're moving them again, so a lot of them have been postponed twice, if not cancelled. So I've still got a fairly full diary for next year, if it's allowed to happen. I've had something like 7 cruises in the diary. The first 3 have been cancelled, but we've still got 4 in there. A lot of the shows I was doing for the theatre shows I was doing in the spring and summer have been moved to 2021. So fingers crossed we can still do them. I mean, it's a shame because we were doing several shows for the VE Day anniversary. And of course, once you postpone them, it's not the anniversary anymore. So that's a bit of a pity. Most of the venues want us to go ahead and do them anyway, because we can, well, just be straight with the audience. Look, we were going to do it last year, but we're doing it this year. So I just hope we don't have to move them again, because it's getting tiresome. People, audiences are going to get out of the habit now of going to the theatre. It makes you wonder whether they're still going to want to come back, or if they're just going to get used to living at home watching the telly. I don't know. We'll just have to hope we can get back to normal. Should have had a pantomime season, 6 weeks in Cardiff. That's just completely scrubbed. So it is a painful time, when you think perhaps we're only halfway through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But hopefully we have still got things in the diary if they're allowed to happen. And we just got to hope that people come back and see us once we get into the venues again.
Absolutely. And I look forward to those days as well. And, bumping into each other, which we often do on festivals, both here and abroad. It's a real surprise when I say, oh, it's Andy. Hey, we're in Czechoslovakia. Oh, we're in Poland. Oh, we're in... which is absolutely marvelous. So I can't wait for those days to return. Andy, this has been an absolute pleasure for me. I'm sure to everybody who's watching this as well. Thank you so much for taking the time out for doing this, and good luck in the future.
Thank you, Peter. It's always a pleasure to see you face to face or on Zoom. It's great to see you. All the best of luck.
Okay, take care.